Welcome back, everybody, to Frankly Saturdays. It's going to be today Travis and Helgi, as always, and we got a really special episode for you today. We're going to be going through doing a keep, loan, sell of all of the players in the Chelsea squad, or at least the most important ones we want to talk about. There's going to be some of them, like Reece James, that'll probably just be yep, we're keeping him and move along. But Helgi, looking forward to this one. Thanks again for having me on, and this has really been a fun segment to do. For any viewers, listeners out there, go ahead and give it a like, give the channel a subscription if you already haven't. Really helps us out. And yeah, if you're ready, let's go ahead and get into it. I don't know if there's a player you want to start with first to get us going.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be back with you here. And of course, as you said, it's a special episode because we'll go through every name that has been mentioned during the fan base, especially the most spicy ones in terms of those who have created a sort of division in terms of opinions of the fans when it comes to deciding whether to keep, loan, or sell specifically. So, of course, it will be a very enjoyable episode. And I'm also intrigued to see the number of names that we'll agree on and the number of names we will have disagreement about. So it will be an interesting one.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there probably will be some disagreement, I think. Then that should be healthy. I mean, we'll get a good discussion out of it.
Yeah, it makes it more constructive, of course.
Absolutely. We just did something similar on my pod, which you'll be on here soon. But yeah, so do you want to start off with some of the least interesting ones and get those out of the way, or just start off right with the most contentious ones?
I think in order to keep a sort of way of organizing things better, let's start from the goalkeepers and go to the attackers, so one by one.
Sounds good to me.
So of course we start with the most obvious name, which is Edouard Mendy. For me, it's a big keep. He's one of the most illustrious players at us in terms of the way he has established himself in the team, and the fact that he came without any sense of flamboyance. We didn't make an announcement video for him at the time when he joined the club, but he has established himself as a key player in our team and also has had a very successful 2-year period for both club and country, which demonstrates his leadership skills as well as his winning mentality and his determination to make sure that he contributes to the success of the team the team he plays, or the teams he plays, if you include the Senegal national team as well, when he won the Africa Cup of Nations and helped them qualify to the World Cup. And also for us, he has been crucial during this period. Of course, I'm not ignoring the fact that he hasn't been at his absolute best after he came back from Africa. Yeah. Had some kind of, let's say, the best. He didn't have the best saving percentage when it. So in the spring period, or let's say in the period that after the club was sanctioned, but it's too naive, in my opinion, to get carried away and think in a reactionary manner about him, because generally speaking, he has been a very shrewd addition to our team, and I really hope that he will have another successful season with us, and hope that he will develop even more. It's not the youngest possible keeper in the world, but also it's very childish, in my opinion, to say that 30 years old is an age to be concerned about keepers, because many keepers have played until the very late 30s, and he has the absolute potential to fall into that category. So I'm very delighted also with the way he has settled off the pitch and has absorbed the language very, very, very quickly, which has quite surprised me. He didn't speak English when he came, and now he seems that he has been settled very well in the club, and everything indicates that he is here to stay and to have the number one spot, which he really deserves. And of course, Kalidou Koulibaly incoming is another factor that also contributes to Mendy's status in the team, and it's a very big positive. So due to his skills in terms of shot stopping, his distribution may improve, and I feel especially the balls that he gives in direct line vertically. But generally, he has the qualities of a keeper that really deserve to be named as the best goalkeeper in the world after we won the Champions League. Kept 9 clean sheets in 12 games he played, so it was very impressive, and so for me, all in all, it's a big keep.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to that. He's a keep for me. It's no questions. I think the biggest reason why he's a keep for me is because we have Kepa, but let's be honest, and we'll talk about Kepa here in a second, but the reality is, when you look at the wages and everything that's involved there, as well as performances and transfer fee, everything, all things considered, Edu is, Mendy's our best keeper by a long shot. And the best thing about Mendy is the kind of just his own personal story of how he even got here. It's quite inspirational for those that haven't really looked into that much. For all these reasons why, I think he's a big keep. I don't really have any reason or argument I could even make to try to move off of Mendy at this point as the starting goalkeeper. And you highlighted the form dipped a little bit in the spring, post AFCON. But at the end of the day, that's one small sample size for his form dipping. Over the entire 2 years that he's been at the club, he's been an absolute mainstay and generally putting in great performances. So keep for me, and I'll drop it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think many fans from our fan base in general could argue, because he has been really influential. And as I said, credit to Petr Cech and Christoph Lolicon for discovering him and for bringing him here, and of course making him one of the most, let's say, one of the key members of our squad.
Absolutely.
The second name is as you said, is Kepa. Of course, this is more debatable than Mendy due to Kepa's strong dips in form. He came in unexpected circumstances when Courtois didn't appear in training in the penultimate day of summer transfer window 2018, and after the club tested the waters for Jan Oblak, they moved and paid the release clause for Kepa, making him the most expensive signing of the club at the time, with the sum approximately counting up to 80 million euros, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it was like 70-some million pounds
Yeah,
at the
in
time.
pounds, yeah. So in euros, it's 80. So that the thing is, and his first season, despite some flaws when it came to shot stopping, there were many positives as well. Especially peaking with that penalty saving performance against Frankfurt, despite the controversy created in the Carabao Cup final. But still, he managed to let's say, find his place back in the starting lineup, and made sure that he gave his contribution in the Europa League success, and the fact that the club secured a spot in the top 4 that season. But things changed drastically in the 1920, with many people also explaining this kind of change in form due to his personal life that wasn't at his best situation. I totally get that, because players are human beings, and the fact that he has had an improvement in form after Thomas Tuchel's arrival says that his potential is there, and he isn't that kind of keeper that to say that he really deserves to play as a number 2.
Yeah.
But in the environment of a top club, you can't really you can't really get away with it just in penalty shootouts. And the fact that he didn't perform in the way we wanted him to in the Carabao Cup final, also at the penalties, raises further doubt regarding the need of keeping Kepa in the team, because he was specifically let's say specifically attributed to saving penalties due to Mendy being the undisputed number one. And that's the reason why I am in doubt. Ideally speaking, I would say also keep for Kepa due to him being a good number two. And I don't think that we should go for another one. I had a different opinion before the start of 2020-2021 season. But now I think that he has improved significantly, and he has shown that in the Carabao Cup games and in the penalty shootouts. But the thing is that the thing is that the changes are made in a player's career, so that he has his right to go and play as a number one, maybe in a team that doesn't have maximal pressure and doesn't fight for every trophy. But still, if he is a sell, it's not my desire, but I would understand that. So ideally, I would go for a keep even in this case. However, I totally understand if it's a sell.
Yeah, I think for me with Kepa, the thing here is, I think you made a lot of good points about from a Chelsea perspective why Kepa is a good number two, and that's a really good reason to keep him. He offers this penalty saving ability, which has its own advantages from a tactical standpoint. It is something to that you can always point to that if we go into a penalty shootout, we can bring on Kepa. But I think that what you really have to think of with Kepa is, at least I would like to think of him as a return on investment type person. And when you look at how much it's been spent for Kepa in the transfer fee, in the wages, I think he was given a 7-year contract. So the amortized value as far as the financial side and how that works functionally for Chelsea's books is a massive amount of amortized value with that kind of transfer sum and that kind of fee or those kind of wages over a 7-year period. That's just a lot of value there. That's been spent by the club, and simply to have that be the number two goalkeeper for you is a very, very low return on investment. And I think that not just from the club's financial perspective, but when you think about this for Kepa himself and who he is, he is someone that has throughout his career been challenging for that number one spot in the Spain national team. He's not going to continue to challenge for that spot as well as he could elsewhere, as far as playing for a club, being a starter there, if compared to if he was to remain at Chelsea as the number two. So I think for his own personal career, he needs to move on. If we could get a loan option, that'd be great. Simply just to let him go out, get a full season as playing as the number one, seeing how that builds his confidence and how that potentially builds everything else that comes with confidence. It also will get him used to just being that week in, week out starter. And it could up his value for potential sale, or we could include an obligation or an option to buy in that loan. But I think he is someone that I would specifically be targeting for a loan, because if you do find a buyer, probably somebody in Serie A, that will just do a pure loan, and at the end of this year or at the end of this upcoming season, if he returns to us and he plays really, really well on that loan, his value will be much, much higher, especially if he plays well enough on that loan to get himself back as the number one in Spain for their goalkeeper position. So I think all things considered, it's best this season to give Kepa a loan, see what he does with that. Hopefully he returns and has increased his transfer value significantly, and then we can move him on, and then we can get all of those wages off of the book, and then maybe find somebody else. I mean, we don't need the world's most expensive goalkeeper to be the backup. We've had plenty of backups in the past, like Begovic, that were cheaper, smarter buys that were very capable of filling in whenever they were called upon to do so. So that's where I'm at with Kepa. I think that financially, as well as for his own personal career, that it's best to let him try to get some type of experience elsewhere this season.
Yeah, I get it, but the problem is that he isn't at an age that can really make a compromise with himself regarding going on loan.
Yeah.
Because we can see much younger players that want a definite decision about their future to be made. So let alone somebody who is, let's say, 26 or 27, if I'm not wrong. So he may want to also to have his future cleared. And also loan, as you say, is a good somewhat of middle choice regarding making sure that we don't lose him permanently, and then for him personally, it would be an opportunity to get in game time before he maybe comes back even better. But the problem is that the wages, as people are saying in the chat, are a significant problem for the teams abroad that have been quoted to want him, maybe Spanish clubs or even Lazio, I read somewhere, which is, and this country's finances aren't that let's say that strong as in England. But I totally get your idea. So for you, is a loan, right?
Yeah, it's a loan for me on Kepa.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the best thing for all parties involved this season. We don't have to really worry too much. I think Bettinelli could. I don't know how good he is. None of us have really watched him. So if we do need to bring in a secondary goalkeeper, something that's cheap, I mean, we've had so many. We used to have like Mark Schwarzer as our backup at like 40-something years old during the Mourinho's second spell. So I don't think that finding a backup goalkeeper is all that impossible. So that's why I would go for the loan this season with Kepa.
Yeah, and also people in the chat can give their comments and their definite answer about keep, loan, sell regarding the players that we are discussing. We are very intrigued to know your thoughts, and please like the video. It helps us a lot, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Travis said it in the beginning of the video, and I'm reiterating it now in order not to miss any new video of the channel and also of our show specifically. Regarding Bettinelli, it's just a simple logic. He causes no harm. So in the sense that he doesn't, let's say, have those aspirations to fill the place of Mendy or even as a backup. So it's not a deal of it's not a case of trying to focus on him now because we have other priority. He has a contract, so let him stay, in my opinion, until his end of the contract, or even if he renews. It's not a big deal at all for me. That he's a third choice keeper, so he won't play much anyway. Although despite the fact that this can sound a bit as a superficial logic, but still it's a case of him not contributing in a sense of competition between the keepers, and just helps in the training ground. Then does Kepa needs to leave? Napoli were interested, alone with option to buy would be decent.
Yeah.
The problem is that the rumors are too sporadic, so there is no strong consistency of news that confirm it. There are usually Italian sources who say something and then the rumor dies, and that's the reason why we don't really take into consideration. Or then I'm not so sure if Napoli is willing to pay his loans as other clubs that can be interested in him in principle, but practically it's difficult due to the fact that finances in Italy, as I said, are not as strong as in England. So before moving to the defenders, for me, Bettinelli is a solo keep in the sense that he doesn't do any harm. For you.
Yeah.
I can't really find another way of expressing myself, really.
I don't really have an argument for any reason to get rid of our third keeper. So I'm fine. I would say keep Bettinelli. You need the numbers, and somebody has to be the least glamorous goalkeeper of them all. So I think that, he did it last year. We'll go ahead and do it again.
Yeah.
I can't come up with an argument to get rid of him. So.
Yeah, but it's not worth it, really.
No, not really.
Now let's move to the defenders. The thing is that we have already lost two key defenders in Rudiger and Christensen. So when we say leave for somebody, so some of the names that we'll treat now, we have to keep at the back of our heads the fact that it's risky to lose too many players from the structure that we already had. Because I see a lot of people, even on Twitter, that say this guy should leave, but the problem is that practically in football, the managers tend to keep the players that have a deal of experience, and especially in periods when you have made changes and we have lost Rudiger and Christensen, it's not easy to make a complete revamp of the back line. But nevertheless, there are always arguments to any kind of choice. I'm The first name to talk about is Thiago Silva. It's an absolute keep for me. I have always loved him, even when he. So I had admired him in the previous clubs, but as a neutral, it's so impressive to see a player which has such a meticulous regime, and the schedule in which he puts himself, the fact that he makes a very balanced life off the pitch, it's also a thing to admire. You can see even when he's injured, his photos in social media are always stuff that have to do with his family life or his training in home conditions, which shows his determination of being systematic, rigid, but in a positive sense. And this also, then his nutrition also, it's a thing to admire, because I have read it that he's very careful in this regard as well. And the fact, and all of this is a complex of reasons, is a sum of factors that justifies the fact that he can play in this kind of levels at 38 years of age. We have to remember that not only has he played for the international team for many years at a very high level, but he doesn't even shows drop in form. And this is so admirable, because traditionally, even those players who play for a considerable amount of time for a club, they generally tend to retire from the national teams years before, while he can do it in a parallel way. He can travel to South America and then come back and perform this kind of levels. And also his leadership skills, despite the language barrier, have been pretty admirable. And also his work with the ball, the fact that he has settled so well in English football, and the fact that he came on a free, are for me make him the perfect signing, really, in a context that transfer market has become a jungle, and you see too many cases of overpriced players that make the clubs fall into a kind of bait and overpay for them and overrate them. Well, Thiago is the antidote of this case. So I'm really thankful that I have witnessed such a play in my club, and I genuinely wholeheartedly hope that he will continue to play in those levels also for some other years, because he's one of a kind in the way he keeps himself fit, and also he established himself as a genuine representative of a team player. Coach says that given his pedigree, I would keep Thiago Silva beyond his playing career. Totally agree. And because he's a leader, and as I said, a team player, in the sense of thanks Just Viola, big up Helgi and Travis, thanks a lot for the support. So I said beyond his playing career, I'd also keep him. And also I mean, even in these years of playing career, I genuinely have the feeling that he can play in this kind of level for at least 2 or 3 years. It may sound as something really unusual for the players playing at this level, and especially in the Premier League, but he has proved to be a kind of example also for the young players who aspire to become to become great defenders in the future. He's so an exceptional player, really, and I'm really thankful that he stayed at the club. He renewed his contract. He's very well settled in London, and also at Chelsea in particular. So what do you think? It's a big keep for me and undisputable.
Yeah, I think you pretty much very thorough with the analysis there on Thiago Silva. I don't have anything to add. He's an absolute keep for me. The only thing I'll caveat is I think that his role this season is probably when we start to see it decline a little bit. The reason being is, let's just talk about this from a coaching perspective, right? You have a 38-year-old player who's playing in a very a very physical league, to say the least, compared to other leagues in Europe. I'm not going to say that it's the end-all be-all of football in the Premier League, but it is a unique challenge compared to other leagues like Serie A, where the pace of play is much slower. So he's a 38-year-old playing in a league with a very quick pace of play. And, whether we're going to play in a back three or a back four for the center backs, either way, he's going to need to be managed very appropriately this upcoming season. We can't pick Thiago Silva, to start 5 straight matches, go on international duty, and then come back and, be a starter. You're going to have to manage him well. And really the reason why is because if you don't go into really working to manage the load that you're going to put upon him this season, he is almost assuredly going to get injured. And I would rather us use him as a rotating starter than him suffer some type of injury at his age, especially because, you never know what an injury could be. If it was something poor, it's an injury we don't want to see for any player. It would probably be the end of his playing career if something like that was to happen. So I think it's going to be very, very important how well we manage Thiago Silva's playing time this upcoming season. But he's absolutely a keep for me. No reason why. And coach, explore keeping him in a mentorship or coaching capacity. I would completely agree with that. I think keeping him around as a mentor would be vastly influential in a positive way for any of the younger guys, especially if like Levi Colwell doesn't get a permanent transfer this summer. It'd be the perfect person to learn from and kind of take under his wing and help kind of draft that next phase of center backs for Chelsea for the years to come. So I think Silva is somebody, and just because of how well he's integrated into the club as well, I could see that mentorship or kind of coaching role, or defensive center back coach, something like that. He would be a positional coach to start out with first. Yeah, absolutely keep for me. I think we can do more with Silva in the future. I think yeah, absolutely just keep Silva, manage him, don't let him get injured, and things will be good.
Yeah, indeed, and I don't even try to debate your elaboration in terms of the way we should manage his potential to play in the long run, if we can consider as a long run the marathon from August to May. But the most impressive fact is that he was one of those guys who Thomas Tuchel couldn't drop in realistic sense last season. So despite the fact that he is 38, he has shown signs of being some of the Benjamin Button of football, and the potential that he has to play in these levels, and the fact that he's self-aware of wanting to play in this kind of levels also for another number of years is very impressive, because no one could know better than the player himself whether to pull the trigger in a way that he can hang his boots. But no, he says that he proves through performances that he is consistent. Although I totally agree with you when you say that we totally agree with you when you say that we should manage his playing time more this season due to him being 1 year older. But let's see, he's an intriguing profile that we are also surprised in a sense to see him, and also in awe with his ability to play with such consistency week in, week out. Another name, I think we'll have an agreement in this case as well, is Trevor Chalobah. He's a kind of example for me also in the sense that he has given a sort of model to the young aspiring players who want to break through the team, that you can't take it for granted. And the fact that he wasn't one of those names who people in love with the academy guys were expecting to see him break through last season. There were other names. Was Conor Gallagher? Someone saying he shouldn't go on loan at all, or even Amanda Broya. But you couldn't really feel the same energy for Chalobah, even after the friendlies, and even after the fact that Tuchel played him in the UEFA Super Cup, and he performed really well. So the thing is that he has shown that you have to deserve that place. It's not that he has been totally consistent. I have had my reservations on him, especially after January, when he had some issues in terms of tracking speedy wingers one-on-one, and he showed that also against Liverpool in the FA Cup final in the first 15 minutes or so. But still, there will be something that you have to improve on a young player, and he is somebody that can evolve in this kind of system. And also the way he grows into the game, even when he doesn't start it in the best possible way, is also impressive, which demonstrates his mentality to make sure that he is in Thomas Tuchel's plans when it comes to defense. So I'm very happy that he has established himself in the team. Of course, he's a rotational option so far, but he has the potential to become a leader at the back line and somebody we can rely on. Also, his work with the feet is very good in the majority of the cases. So for me, it's a keep. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I kind of put out a tweet about this. I think it was this earlier this week. When we talked, when we kind of the news broke that we got Koulibaly. Everybody was talking about all these defenders, XYZ, but nobody was really talking about Chalobah and what's going to happen, or where does he go with all of these defensive signings. And this is back when we were still rumored to be getting like Ake, Kempepe, and as well as still the Koulibaly signing. So I've kind of already had that thought in my head that, we might be signing all of these defenders, but Chalobah has to still have a role in the team. And I think that he has to have a role in the team because on that right side, he's one of those only people that we currently have to play that right-sided center back in a back three. And I think the other reason why is because Chalobah can actually shift into midfield. He did that when he was on loan at Lorient in Ligue 1. He's somebody that can fill in that position if need be. And everybody has probably noticed that we haven't signed any type of defensive midfielders this offseason. We don't really have a what people would call, I guess, a traditional defensive midfielder. We do have a defensive midfielder. It's just not the role that people are used to, putting upon it a defensive midfielder, in the sense that Jorginho is more of this deeper line playmaker. But all of that to say, I think that Chalobah could fill into that role if need be, much how we've had the discussions of Ethan Ampadu possibly filling in that role if need be. For me, Chalobah's a keep. I think tactically he offers positional flexibility, and I think that he is, as well, his passing profile as a center back is much better than we think of with some of the other players that are in our squad at the moment. And the other thing I think about Chalobah too is he has the most Rudiger-like ability to push forward and have those two center backs behind him cover him. But he's really able to get into that attacking third, I think, much more like Rudiger was, to apply those pressures, to have that, stop that basically the guy back behind everybody as a recycling for when possession, ball rotation, as far as how they're moving the ball around, breaks down, put it back to Chalobah, let him recycle. I think he can refill that role of Rudiger, but just more on the right as opposed to the left. It's a keep on Chalobah for me. I think he's somebody that not only should have a role in the team, I think he needs to have an important role in the team. And I think that he'll have enough, as far as numbers go, in talent, he's going to be somebody that will be able to carve out that role. I think Tuchel sees his ability and his talent and the profile of player that he offers. Absolutely, it's a keep for me. There's enough of a role for Chalobah to get by at the club.
Yeah, totally agree. And also regarding your points about his versatility and the fact that he can carry the ball forwards, I said the work with his feet of him is so admirable. So for me, it's a keep as well. The other name is an interesting one because it's one of those names that have created a kind of division between the fan base, also for sentimental reasons. And it's the name of our captain, Cesar Azpilicueta. Now the issue is this: that if I in one of the episodes of the show with Dan before the I think even before the sanctions or during that period, it was a case of Aspi situation coming in as a sort of context to one of our topics that we were discussing at the time, and I was in favor of keeping him. But I had a sort of change in mind when his performances showed a sharp level of decrease in the last 2 months, with that Everton game coming to mind, and he didn't play well actually, and made the mistake which led to the Richarlison swinner. So I'm confused in this regard because there are many aspects. Now, sentimental reason is one, but I tend to think rather than to decide based on heart. He's an invaluable member of our club, has given massive contribution, has practically won it all, and and even if he leaves, I think every sensible Chelsea fan would give him his blessings if he goes somewhere else and decides to start a new experience. But the issue is that his possible departure can come at the wrong time for the club in need for some kind of leadership, when we have lost two players that I'm not saying Christensen was really a leader, but there were two established defenders since Thomas Tuchel came, and if Aspi goes, then we'll lose three centre backs, and due to the latest reports, it's something that Thomas Tuchel doesn't want to have. He sees Aspi as a member of a back line that needs experience, especially in this particular period. So, and also the fact, if it's also a discussion to be made whether we can sign a suitable right wing backup or not. So at the time, I don't know. He has shown interest for Jonathan Klaus from Lens, but still, it's a question mark. And I think I expect him to leave. Todd Bowley's meeting in Barcelona was for a reason. He has expressed his desire to leave. So based on the fact that we somebody have a moral obligation, if we can call it this way, to respect his desire due to what he has done for the club in years, his ability to play different positions and perform consistently, we may have to sell him in order to respect his desire and his will to embark something new in a less physical and less intense league like Spanish league is. But for the interests of the manager who wants to keep him, that's the reason why I'm feeling a bit confused and difficulty to make a decision. But circumstances led me to thinking that it's an unfortunate sell.
Yeah, I actually have very similar thoughts to you as far as Azpilicueta goes. Just a reminder for all of the listeners out there, if you haven't already, go ahead and give this video a like, give it a subscription as well. Really helps the channel out. We appreciate all the support and tuning in to listen to us talk about all of this going on a Saturday morning. But to get back to Azpilicueta, I think the reason why what you said is the best way to put it is because we're kind of caught between two worlds. I think that in purely looking at it from the club perspective, given where things currently stand, I think that Azpilicueta is somebody that we should keep, simply because that we don't really have that right wing back depth at all right now. If Reece James was to be injured and we sell Azpilicueta, I'm not even sure who would fill in on that right hand side, assuming we keep the three at the back system with the wing backs that we've seen from Thomas Tuchel for the better part of the last 18 months. So I think that given that perspective from the club, he is a keep. But I think that you said it so well there that this is somebody that we should massively respect. And it's not somebody that we should hold against their will. He's done so much with the club. He's been one of the best bargain signings that we've had as far as output, the value for the output that he's given in terms of what we had to pay for him, which was a very small fee. He's played right back, he's played left back, he's played center back, he's played wing back, he's played even with Mourinho, he's played up front as a wide midfielder before. So I think that the reason why we have to be so careful here is because he is a club legend. He is the captain that served for so long. He's been such a great servant to the club. I mean, one of the better ones that I have been able to watch as a fan of Chelsea in my lifetime. He's been a great player for us. But if he wants to leave, he wants to move on, I don't think there is any conceivable reason for us to oppose that. And just looking, kind of reading between the lines here, it does seem that Azpilicueta wants to go. And I think if we're going to assume the reality is he wants to go, then despite all of the reasons why I would keep him, I would say that's a sell. If he wants to go, I'd absolutely let him go. No reason to hold somebody who doesn't want to be here after they've given so much to us.
So it's a sell, right?
I would say it is, given everything that we've heard and considered. It would be a sell for me. I think that it's time to give him something more, as well as potentially it is time for us to move on and find a right wing back replacement that can fill in for a few years and let him go out, let him go home to Spain. He's trying to still push and make his case to make the national squad for the winter. And I think that he better does that in Spain with a new team than he does as a second or third choice for Chelsea right now.
Yeah. The other name is Marcos Alonso. The choice here for me is simpler. I don't want to disrespect what he has done because he has given sort of contribution, maybe not as consistently as we want to see from a Chelsea player in the best possible standards, but he has contributed through goals and through being a profile that in specific games when he was a player that during all these 6 years with us has been a sort of profile that has defied the expectations of the fans, both in a positive and in a negative way. So if you had a random or a casual game in a cup tie or even in the Premier League against the team of the bottom 5 or bottom 10, you could see him perform so very poorly and very underwhelmingly. But if you had the Champions League tie away when there was no room for mistakes, you may have ended up saying that this guy performed better than I expected him to play when the lineups were out. And this was for me personally, it was a kind of casual process in terms of evaluating him, thinking that, okay, this guy, how did he perform so well in an away game in Champions League tie when he didn't perform even averagely in the Premier League at home against a specific side that it's 12th or 13th or 14th in the table. And the thing is that he has shown that he has deficiencies, but he's one of those profiles, in my opinion, that has benefited from the fact that we have played in 3 at the back, because under Frank Lampard he was frozen out, and it was for a reason, that he has shown too many fragilities and deficiencies when he plays as a natural left back, while as a left wing back he shows more solidity. I'm not saying he has been Ben Chilwell kind of performer, but he has been acceptable more often than not. However, for me it's a sell due to the fact that just thanks for the contribution, but it's time to leave, and we should upgrade in that position in order to cultivate and nurture the culture of having 3 or 4 players, or even 2, but similar in quality in every position. And I think in terms of left wing back role, there is significant difference in terms of comparing Ben Chilwell and Marcos Alonso in the long run. I'm not talking about specific games, but in the long run, it's a difference between the two, and we should move away, I think, from this culture of having one undisputed starter and one backup, but to move like Manchester City do, and more or less Liverpool, that have similar players of similar quality in every position who can compete and stretch each other due to this habitat of competition, and we don't really have it. So I think For me, it's a sell. Thanks for the contribution, but we have to upgrade on him, and preferably we should get somebody who is younger, cheaper in price. I'm not saying to exaggerate in sense of what we should pay for his replacement, but somebody who is disciplined defensively wise. This is a key one, and also he's better technically. So who can be better technically with the ball at his feet and can keep the width with more more ease, and also contribute in attack even better through crosses and overloading the left wing in the last 20 meters. So I think that for me it's a sell.
Yeah, so looking here at the poll results, we've got 64% saying sell, and we've got 36% saying keep. So, if you follow me on Twitter long enough, you know that I am a fan of Marcos Alonso, probably one of the only fans of Marcos Alonso in the fan base. Of a few other ones I can think of, but regardless, so a few things on Marcos Alonso before I give my verdict on him. I don't know if anybody was able to read this article. But this article came out. It was written by Olawua, and you can find him on Twitter at McNobsy. He's also a co-host on my podcast with me as well. Does a lot of really good content and statistical analysis writing with comparing players based upon stats. So if you haven't already, give him a follow. He did a really good article. But to get into what his article was about recently, it actually looked at the statistics post Ben Chilwell injury. And compared the right and left side of Chelsea's attack. And because there's always this narrative that the left side is just there to be taken because Alonso's so slow and he pushes too far forward and he's positionally not good. Well, Ola's analysis actually found that the majority of attacks against Chelsea's back line came from the right side. And it also found that the majority of chances created against Chelsea, so opponents creating chances in the final third against us, came from the right side. And it also found basically that Reece James defensively, as far as the metrics go, as far as the where and how often oppositions attack Chelsea, that it's always on Reece James' side and not on Marcos Alonso's side. By, not saying that it doesn't happen. This is also, we're talking about things relatively here. There are attacks on the left and they are on the right, but it's disproportionately on the right compared to the left. So with that said, right, there's more attacks on the right. There's more chances coming from the right. There's more goals being given up from the right, which is pretty indicative that it's not just Alonso being this defensive, just defensive liability that everybody likes to say he is. And furthermore, like when you look at Alonso compared to Chilwell, right, they're in per 90 stats, their assists per 90 is the same. Their expected assists, Alonso actually has a higher expected assists per 90 than Chilwell. As far as, and what we hear so often about is the defensive deficiencies of Alonso. He's better. He does more tackles per 90 than Ben Chilwell. He wins more tackles per 90 than Ben Chilwell. He has more tackles in the defensive third than Ben Chilwell per 90. And he has them more in the attacking third as well. So he's winning the ball higher up the pitch. Overall, I mean, he doesn't press as much and as well as Ben Chilwell, but the difference is only about 5% in the successful press percentage. Just overall, I mean, when you really look at the statistics, blocks, as far as block shots go, they're almost the same per 90, but where there's a big difference is Marcos Alonso is creating almost 1.74 times more interceptions per 90 than Ben Chilwell. So just painting a quick picture here that Alonso is, I think a lot of what is said in the fan base for his deficiencies is well overstated. I mean, as a left wing back, he is an incredible player. And we don't have anybody else to play left wing back. So for me, I would keep up Marcos Alonso. There's nobody else to play his position if Chilwell goes down. And we saw what those effects will be if Chilwell goes down. So I would rather keep somebody who we know, a proven commodity as a very good player, as a left wing back, as opposed to keeping somebody that we don't know. And just for a little bit more comparison here, just to talk about Alonso a little bit more and so in the last year, so pretty much all of last season, is what this data is coming from. So looking at this on a percentile basis, so this is basically saying against all other players, where does Marcos Alonso fit in here? So if you're above 50% on the percentile chart, that means that you're better than average. And the closer you get to 100, the more of a statistical outlier you are for that given category relative to the entire population of all other fullbacks in the top 5 leagues of European competition. So just very quickly, this is another reason why I say keep Alonso. Look at the profile player that he offers. Non-penalty goals per 90, he's at 0.13. Shots per 90, he's at 1.82. 1.8 expected assists per 90. Shot creating actions, which is was basically a footballing action that leads to eventually. So it's basically I play a pass to somebody who then plays another pass that then leads to a shot. That's what a shot creating action would be like. He's in the 96th percentile for fullbacks. He's in the 77th percentile for passes attempted, 63rd for completion percentage, 60th for progressive passes, 63rd for progressive carries, 94th percentile for touches in the attacking penalty area, 97th percentile for progressive passes received. So he's really good at getting into space, especially going forward. And then a few other ones. He is in the 90th percentile for interceptions per 90, and he's in the 94th percentile for aerials won. So I'm going to stop now with Marcos Alonso. I probably just said way too much to make my case. But somebody that we don't have a profile of player, and he is very, very good at what he does, and the fan base generally hates on him, I think, for really no reason at all, because we hear these narratives on Twitter that he's just slow, which actually he's faster than some people you might not think of. But regardless, it's a keep for me. We don't have anybody back up. He has a very good skill set. He's very, very good. I think as far as rotational player, we don't have a bad profile here. I think he's fine as a rotational player.
We finally disagreed on something, yeah.
Finally, and we've got RJ here saying the thing with Marcus is it depends on the opposition. In some instances where an opponent is not as aggressive in their press or have high attacking ambition, it allows Marcus to exploit the space. And I think you're right on that. So, like, let's say, for example, whenever we're playing low blocks, which we tend to struggle to break down, what RJ just said here perfectly describes Marcos Alonso. Play him against lower blocks because he's such an offensive threat. And against those lower blocks, right, if we already have 2 or 3 people back to stop a counter, then he can push forward a little bit more with more license because he has very, very good positioning. He doesn't have the recovery pace as much, but his positioning is really good to stop things. So I think that's a good point by RJ there, and a little bit of caveating, how Marcus can best be used. But until somebody else comes through the door to play left wing back or left fullback, I don't see a reason to sell Marcus. I just don't. But I know that's going to be to the chagrin of most people in the fan base to hear that from my opinion. But that's where I'm at with it. That's what I see. That's what he's good at. I think he still offers something.
No, I totally respect that. And in the condition that you put, that if we don't sign somebody new, I would also keep him. But the problem is that the situation is that it's very likely that someone new will come in if he leaves. So that's the most realistic scenario. And I totally rate the fact that you brought all the data regarding his performance in comparison with Chilwell and also players in a similar position. But the thing is, it's a kind of case that the eye test also helps creating an opinion on a player because you watch him, and this inconsistency that I have seen is a problem. And we shouldn't also forget the fact that he also isn't regarded to be the best possible personality in the team. If you remember the game, I think against Wolves, it was when we drew 2-2 and Thomas Tuchel withdrew him and put Saul on in the in half time. And it was reported that he had the bust up with Tuchel in the dressing room, but it was quickly, let's say, left out. So it was ignored, let's say, due to the fact that we had an FA Cup final to play and the games to focus on to reach the top 4. So the fact is that we he shows some inconsistencies when you don't expect him to show,
Yep.
and he is consistent when you expect him to perform badly, and that's what my personal impression on him. So that's why I'm saying that it's not a case of hate, and I don't hate anybody because it's childish and ignorance to say, but it's something that it's an impression got on the fact that we can do better than him, in my opinion, in order to strengthen that left wing, and to compete against City and Liverpool better. If we have something of a similar profile to Chilwell, also more plausible to the eye test, because it's something that you have to bear in mind. And for me, Chilwell is the number one, and now that we will move to Chilwell and James, because those aren't obvious answers. I think we're getting them together. So it's a case. So after Alonso, it's Chilwell, and for me, it's a big keep. Due to the fact that he has surprised me first and foremost. I had my doubts when he came. People prejudged him, maybe due to being English, and rather people would like to say foreign imports in the club. Maybe some names that are more catchy when it comes to integrating them in the team and signing them from elsewhere. But he has proven to be such a shrewd and good sign for the club, and I genuinely hope that he keeps and if not builds on better levels after the injury, the ACL injury that he got. It's an absolute keep for me. He's a good left back and also a very good left wing back and absolute keep. And I think it's the same answer from you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a keep for me on Chilwell. The only thing I think that I would caveat is we don't know what he's going to be like in his return from that injury. It might be the first year back, might not be as good as what we're used to. Generally with ACLs, it takes about a full year after rehabbing and returning to full play. So basically, if he returns in August, you might expect until August 2023 for him to really recover where he was before the injury. So ACLs just generally in football, they're a little bit less of a timeline than in other sports, but it's still, generally speaking, a 6 to 9 month rehabbing process before you're fully cleared to resume 100%. And then, given that the data generally shows that it takes about a full 12 months to resume your basically ability pre-ACL. So after you have that tear, it takes about a year to get back to what you were, or at least similarly to what you were before the injury happened. So this season might not be as good as we might expect from Chilwell. There might be some lag from the injury and the ACL recovery, and just takes time for that basically to get back to where it needs to be. From a playing ability, he's had a lot of time off. So that's all I'll say about Chilwell. Absolutely a keep. But what I just said is another reason why I would keep Alonso. He knows club, he's experienced, he has a profile that works. We know what he can offer, we know what he can't offer. But we don't really know how Chilwell returns yet. So I'm keeping both of them in that dynamic. And that's it. And we did have a comment here. It says, does anybody know about Ziyech's situation? Very mixed information about him joining Milan. This is coming from what I'm assuming is a Milan fan. So first, the latest on Ziyech was that he basically is moving to he got rid of his agent, is moving to more representing himself and his own team of people. So that was the first development, and everything that I have heard as a Chelsea fan is that the club is actively, allowing him to seek other options, and that Milan have been the most concrete link. And this is not just this summer, but we have seen Milan reportedly throw around some interest in Ziyech for over a year now. So as far as anything concrete bids, I don't have that information, and I haven't seen any information about a concrete offer coming in from Milan for Ziyech. But it does look like, having signed Sterling, it has paved the way for Ziyech to move out of the club. He just generally has not fit Thomas Tuchel's style well at all. He's just not that profile player for the way in which Thomas Tuchel is using his inside forwards, as opposed to being more out-and-out wingers, which is what Ziyech is better at. So to answer your question, not anything concrete, but all signs and everything we've seen and we've heard for not just right now, but over the past 12 months do kind of point to this potential of him going to Milan.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either, but in terms of my opinions, yes, I'll talk when the turn comes. The turn comes. So when we talk about the attacker specifically, totally agree on Chilwell. As I said, I genuinely hope that he will come back stronger than ever,
Yep.
because this kind of the situation of having a long-term injury can go either way. You either drop in form or then or the player can find the sort of motivation to prove everyone that I'm not not damaged by the injury in the long run, and now I am stronger than ever to prove everyone that I can continue in the same path that I used to do before the injury and before getting sidelined for months. And I think their answer is the same about Reece. He's For me. I used to watch a lot of Cobham games when this current generation of players who have broken the first team, like Chalobah, Mason, Reece, Hudson-Odoi, were in the under 18 system under Jody Morris, and Reece showed the kind of maturity that so it was amazing to see from a player like him. For me, practically can play in every right wing position of all. So he can play as a right center back, right wing back, right back, and even as a right winger specifically, he through to his sharp crosses, he can do well in certain scenarios, and this is something that he has always had in the academy, and through to his winning mentality, has kept in loan at on loan at Wigan, and now he has deservedly broken through the team. So the only thing I have to think about him and to make sure that it happens is renewing his contract with a significant wage
Yeah.
increase as soon as possible, because he is currently on 70,000 pounds per week, which is a significantly low wage in the context of the wages that we are giving to other players who clearly don't deserve to earn as much as he does. So for me, it's also a personal opinion, but I would go on to that point that he is a tire above the other academy products that we have, including Mount, with all due respect, because I think Mays is a very intriguing player and can build and become a crucial profile for us in the long run. But Reece is a level above through his maturity and consistency on and off the ball, and his versatility to play in different positions. And also in midfield, he has played at Wigan, and this is a kind of English Joshua Kimmich profile when it comes to playing in a lot of positions and at ease. So it's an absolute key.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as far as that goes with with Reece James, it's a keep, and keep again. Next player.
Yeah, yeah. Emerson. Now the thing is with him is it's for me it's a sell due to the fact that he. I took the name in consideration because I'm seeing some revisionism from the fans in general, that we wanted him back in January, and at Lyon he had a couple of positive performances, but as far as I'm concerned, he wasn't as impressive at Lyon as people are making it to be. And despite the fact that he shows uh, some kind of skills at the ball, some accelerations that seem more eye-catching than Alonso's, he still lacks the defensive discipline and has too too many disappointing lapses in concentration when it comes to defending set pieces, or also to in terms of positional awareness. I don't think he is a Chelsea level player. So um, it's one of those cases when I think that a player is good but not Chelsea good. So for me, it's a sell.
Yeah, I think it's a tougher one on that. I think you summed it up pretty well there for me. I don't have too much to disagree with there on that one. It's kind of a weird position for just kind of in general the back line, where we have really no fullbacks. We have this kind of big center back shuffle, but I would agree with you on that one as well. It's probably a sell for me on that.
Yeah. Now let's come to the last name of, if I'm not mistaken, of the defenders. It's Malang Sarr. Now it has become one of those notorious names due to the fact that and whenever the fans try to address a kind of low-level profile of players in our team, he's the first name who comes to mind. Has become sort of archetype, which on one side isn't as as good or as interesting to see from a perspective of a fan, because he has tried to give his best when he has played, although the fact that I don't think he's Chelsea level, and it's an accident that he remained at the club last season after his loan move to Bundesliga collapsed in the last days of the summer transfer window. So I don't think it was never a case of him breaking through the team, even when he was signed, because we exploited the situation of him not getting a contract renewal from Nice, and it seemingly was a case of somebody that came into the team in order to become a profit material in the future for the club. And I think that is still the case, despite the fact that Tuchel integrated him. So with the condition that we get other defenders, for me it's either sell or a loan if we can't sell him, but I don't think it would be difficult to sell. However, I'm always speaking in principle, not with the fact that we may get other defenders at the back of my mind, but still with if Louis Colville stays, also I don't think that there is a place for Malang Sarr. Like Emerson, it's not just a case of we aren't abusing the player, and we aren't saying that this player is fortunate to become a footballer in principle, but it just isn't Chelsea level. So for me, it's a sell.
Yeah, I mean, and for me as well, it's going to be a sell on Malang Sarr. I don't see any reason to keep him. I think that we purchased him initially as a prospective buy in the sense that he was a free. Nobody snapped him up. He had a ton of promise. People might not know this, but Malang Sarr was one of the most highly regarded center backs out of France relative to what his age. So for his age group, he was one of the most highly regarded ones. Nobody went after him when he became a free agent. He comes to us, and I think the club simply bought him with the intention of, if we buy him, we put him on loan, maybe he gets better, and we basically make some money off of him whenever we do move him on. I think that was always the intention. We did see some good performances from Sarr, and then we saw how poor it can really get with him. And I just don't think that's the profile that we're going to look for with this massive inconsistency as far as the center backs go, especially if we move to playing a back four. We really cannot have inconsistency and waiting for players to develop in that center back spot. So for me, it is a sell on Malang Sarr. He got his 2-year trial. Chelsea got a lot of wages while he's here. So, I think he is on a shocking amount of wages per week, given what he has contributed for the club. For me, I think it's time to cash in. It's time to let him go be a starter at more of a mid-table level team. And I think that's best for all parties involved. So it is a sell for me.
Yeah. I'm temporarily avoiding the loanies for a moment, so I'm going through the midfielders. The first name is an obvious one. For me, it's the best midfielder that we currently have in the team, who is Mateo Kovacic. He has been one of those signings that came with a breath of controversy when he was signed, that people doubted the fact whether he wasn't an undisputed starter at Real Madrid. The fact that he came on loan made people judge him. Also, even when he was playing regularly under Maurizio Sarri, there were some traditional fans with conservative approach that labeled him as a sort of non-Chelsea profile, non-Chelsea level, due to him not scoring goals or giving assists regularly. But for me, there's always been a case of misunderstanding, because the way he uh, shows his press resistance skills, and the fact that he uh, shows a considerable number of progressive carries, the fact that he bursts into empty spaces with the ball and can be a very imposing player when he has possession, and can keep up to the pace of English football, is crucial for a foreign import to adapt to the league. Because you may see the opposite, that the player in principle can be technically astute, but just due to the fact that he isn't able to absorb the intensity of the league, he doesn't find a regular place, while Kovacic is a polar opposite of this. And for me, it's a pleasure that we have a player like him in the team, and the way he has established himself as a very consistent and 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 undisputed starter in the team for in a desert way. I think it's a it's an absolute keep for me. He was one of my players of the season last year. Voted for Thiago Silva, but still he was a close second.
Yep.
And the fact he doesn't score or assists a lot is not a factor to say that he isn't Chelsea level. He's somebody that it's a pleasure for him to watch, especially at his best. He can link up defense with attack very well, and also um, and also his scanning process, where the way he adjusts his body and the way he doesn't panic under pressure is exceptional. And I hope he continues in this way and keeps winning trophies with us. So a great presence in our team, and it's an absolute keep.
Yeah, I have no reason whatsoever to get rid of Kovacic in any capacity. I think he's our best midfielder. I think he's the first midfielder on the team sheet every week. I think he has the best dribbling ability. He has the best progressive passing ability, his ability to carry the ball. I mean, just, there are some deficiencies, but overall, I voted for Kovacic as my player of the year last year. I think that if he remains healthy, there's no reason why he couldn't get another player of the year. Granted, player of the year is a fan voted award anyway, so I kind of don't put too much stock in the fan voting. Myself, it generally has a lot of flaws with it being, the way it is. So I'd have to say on Kovacic, it is a keep, no questions asked. He's the first midfielder on the team sheet. You can't get rid of that profile of player.
Yeah. The other name is N'Golo Kante. Now, he's a fan favorite in general due to his contribution in the over the years, and he has helped us win trophies. And at his best, he produces man of the match performances. Like, it's not easy to ignore somebody who only in 2020, 2021 won the man of the match award in both semifinals against Real Madrid, also in the Champions League final against Atletico in the home game in the round of 16 when we won 2-0. And also over the years, he has been that engine of midfield that we have been very thankful to watch play and to have in our club. Has been my first choice for the midfield in 2016 summer window, where everyone was going crazy due to the prospect of us signing Raja Nainggolan at the time, and I was never convinced. And when N'Golo Kante's name came up, I thought that this should be the number one, and I'm very glad that we signed him, and then he has won a lot with us, and I hope that he continues winning, because for me it's a stay due to the I know that I will there will be people debating this choice. However, staying the keep doesn't mean that he should play week in, week out, but due to the fact that in the current circumstances we have other priorities to solve, which are defense and attack, it's not good to make many changes in midfield. And I think 2 or 3 seasons of him wouldn't be the worst thing, because you need to have also players that can be squad players and can play with a restricted number of minutes if you manage their physical shape well enough. And I think that despite his frequent injuries, which are a problem in itself, and I'm not ignoring that, but if you manage his condition well enough, he can be a kind of profile. They play in different positions. They have always been an 8 for me, Kante, a box-to-box player. But in terms of the treatment, he can become a similar profile like Fernandinho was for City. So somebody that gradually didn't get the same number of minutes and didn't have the same status at the team, but still was an underrated presence and a valuable player to come and to contribute, even in the last 30 or 20 minutes of a game when you have to protect a result and you need some of the intensity on the pitch. So for me, Kante is a keep. I know that there are people that will debate this, that consider that he is far from his initial shape, that he is showing some effects of struggling with physical injuries, muscle problems, and stuff like that. But still, for me, it's not easy to pull the plug on a player that at his day can be the best and also can be a very good option to keep as a rotation player. And this is also based on the fact that Thomas Tuchel rates him highly. So for the benefit of everyone, I think it's a keep. 2 or 3 more seasons of him wouldn't be the worst thing, and I think that there will be cases when we'll see the benefits of it.
Yeah, so I think Conte is a difficult one for me. So a couple things. The first thing is let's just look at Conte himself. His age. He's getting into his almost his mid-30s by this point. He suffers injuries routinely now. He's lucky to play half of a season. So just painting that picture, you can probably tell where I'm leading along to. And furthermore, he's had repeated soft tissue injuries. And when you have these repetitive soft tissue injuries, generally what happens is every time you have one, you never come back 100%. And this is in the dynamic of being, repeated injuries. Just another reminder out there for everybody watching, if you haven't already, go ahead and give the show a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. It really helps us out, and we really appreciate all of your support and your time tuning in to listen and watch us go through all of this. But to continue on with Conte, right, when these repetitive soft tissue injuries happen, he's going to be losing his ability every single time as far as from a physical standpoint goes. Given his age and how much he's played in his career and how many injuries he's had. And then let's talk about the skill set that he does have. It's just simply a skill set that doesn't age well, especially with repeated injuries. His ability to cover space is going to decline the older he gets and the more injuries he sustains. It just isn't a skill set that ages well, like comparatively to someone like Andrea Pirlo, right? That kind of skill set ages well. Every player is probably going to decline with progressive age, but there are just different skill sets that some players have that allow them to play at that top level for longer. Primarily the skill sets that don't involve physical sprinting or movement, things like that, tend to go first before the ball playing ability or whatever it might be, like an Andrea Pirlo, like deep lying playmaker, regista, whatever you might call that position or that role. So my stance on Conte is this. I'm happy to keep him around, and we haven't heard any links really at all this summer to Conte being bid for. But if there was like a 60 million pound bid that comes in for Conte, I would accept that immediately and let him move on, because we're going to have to move on from Conte regardless. But the thing is, too, is we know that just look at everything he's done. He's been here a long time. I mean, Conte has been here, 2 seasons with Conte, 1 season with Sarri, season and a half with Lampard, and a season, so 2 with, we'll just call it 2 with Lampard, 1 with Sarri, 2. I mean, he's been here 6 years. So he's going into his 7th season at the club. That is a really long time to stay at one club in modern football. So if the right price comes in, I would sell Conte. But if it doesn't come in, I'm happy to keep him. I just think that we really have to work on our management of Conte better. And I think a part of that, too, comes down to the France national team needs to work on their load management of Conte much better, because it seems that he's here, he's okay, he goes to France, and he gets hurt. And it's just it's happened too many times now to where it's not just a coincidence. I think it is a noticeable trend, something that's very observable. So my answer with Conte is we keep unless a good offer comes in, and then I would just sell based upon principle of where he is, how his skill set ages, in his repeated injury history. So that's where I'm at with Conte.
Yeah. In the comments says, before moving to Jorginho, Kante and Kovacic are injury prone. Not addition of another midfielder can allow the manager to manage them properly with rotation next season. Agree with that if we see the situation from a physical perspective. But I don't think that Kovacic is somebody that Thomas Tuchel would really like to drop, even if somebody new comes in the door and joins the current personnel of midfield that we have. Kante is injury prone, and I stated that, Travis stated that, and we think that we basically, if we manage his physical situation better, we can reap the fruits of this from him. That's the case. There is not a kind of occasion, a kind of rare circumstances that he performs in Champions League games, because they may be less intense than Premier League games when it comes to the physicality of the teams you play against, so that he has a possibility to give his best, and it's a good team member to keep around. Maybe not in the same status as before, but still for me it's a keep. Jorginho. Now the Jorginho situation is a very awkward one. I have been in constant changes of opinion regarding him. Now dating. How can I express myself in this case, because it's a bit tough. When we were due to sack Antonio Conte in 2018, a friend of mine asked me that if was only one player that you would get from Napoli at the time, who would he be? And I immediately said Jorginho, because I used to watch a lot of Napoli games back then, even before Maurizio Sarri's name appeared to be a potential replacement of Antonio Conte at the club as a manager. And Jorginho had a kind of profile that really lacked in English football, even culturally wise. So he wasn't the kind of destroyer, but it was sort more of a Michael Carey kind of profile that used to build from deep rather than to destroy the opposition attacks. Although the ideal scenario is to do both, right? Something like Rodri does at Man City, and Jorginho doesn't really excel at the defensive aspect of the game. However, he is a player that has been influential in terms of when it comes to team controlling possession and dictating the tempo. And there have been several cases when a double pivot of Kante and Kovacic has made us lose a bit of calmness of the ball, and we have lost ground. And this is the reason why I'm saying keep him specifically in this transfer window. Maybe we can have another discussion next summer, when we move away somewhat from this transition. Defenders are signed, maybe attackers are signed, and we focus more specifically in midfield. But as it stands, I would keep him due to his calmness on the ball when he is in his top level performance, and the fact that he gives a sense of ability to the team to control possession, especially in high intensity games. He has his flaws. As I said, I'm not the biggest fan of his defensive play, but his mentality is very good as well. He was abused from the fans, especially match-going fans, and he still was determined to absorb this abuse and prove them wrong. Yeah, that's the reality at the time. And he was dropped out of favor under Frank. And at the time, I started to think that, okay, this guy is a very good player, but not for English football, because he needs 3 or 4 seconds to release the ball, which you can find in Italy, but not really in England, when you don't really have too much time and space to, especially in his position in front of the defense. But along with a number of other players, he established himself, re-established himself in the team under Thomas Tuchel, and made sure he win the UEFA Player of the Year award, and also won 3 European trophies and contributed to each of them under for 2 for us and the European Championship for his national team. So for me, it's another keep, and I'm against in general losing midfielders this summer due to other priorities. So for me, it's a keep.
Yeah, so for Jorginho, the big thing here about him, before we do that, there's a comment here from Coach Chris that, Conte is our best player, and when fit and on form, he's a top 5 player on the planet. And I would agree with that he is one of our better players when he's fit and on form, but those things don't happen as nearly as often as they used to. So I think that's kind of the caveat there. But with Jorginho, the thing for Jorginho is I don't know if people are keeping track of this, but we have a Winter World Cup to play this year, when that's going to mean a lot of our good and best players go on to play in that. And then we're going to have a lot of players returning that are going to be to say that load management is going to win the title this year in the Premier League might be a bit of an overstatement, but I think that it's not that terribly far from the truth. And what I mean by that is not just like individual players, but how are entire teams going to adapt to load management, given that they're going to play about half of the season and then all their best players are going to leave for a month and then come back having played a month-long tournament. How are they going to manage that? Well, if we go ahead and keep Jorginho, we don't have to worry about that as nearly as much for one of the most important positions that we have in the squad, which is the role that he does play, because Italy will not be at the World Cup, right? We are going to have players that stick around that aren't in the World Cup that are serviceable. Jorginho fills that profile. He is exactly that. He'll probably be our best player that's not going to the World Cup this upcoming winter. So I'm keeping Jorginho on that alone. But just like with Conte, I caveat it with this. If Juventus or some other team in Italy comes in with a 50 to 60 million pound bid, so basically what we bought Jorginho for 5 years ago, then I'm going to take that offer. I'm going to accept that offer, because it's a matter of what we can get when we can get it, and how that financial positive that sale would generate is going to help us down the road. So I would really keep Jorginho this offseason, but if an offer we can't refuse comes in, then that's when I would feel okay letting him go, and losing that key depth that we would have for the World Cup. That's what I would say with Jorginho. It's a keep, but there are circumstances where I would let him go. Basically, just like Conte.
Just like, that's what I'd say. So, as I said, for obvious reasons, I'm temporarily avoiding the loanies. The last two names that we have to discuss about midfield, which for me are 2 sells, and I don't think that any sensible Chelsea fan would disagree without trying to impose my opinion on anybody. It's Ross Barkley and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I'm taking them both together because of a simple reason that for me, there is one of the biggest problems that we had last season was the fact that we didn't have a balanced squad in terms of personnel. So you had Jorginho, Kante, and Kovacic as main midfielders who are significantly better than Loftus-Cheek, Barkley, and Saul as rotation options. And the thing is, regarding Ross Barkley, he's just a case of Danny Drinkwater, but he can't even get on loan. So I don't want to comment much on that, because he just isn't Chelsea level player, and I don't really think that in these steps he will be a Premier League level player either, without trying to be harsh. So for me, it's a sell. About Loftus-Cheek is a bit more difficult if you are sentimentally driven and think that this guy got promoted from the academy, scored against Scunthorpe in 2015-16. It was a good moment for him. Went on loan then at different Premier League teams, at Crystal Palace, at at Fulham. He was at Fulham. So I think there are cases of evaluating his opinion on him. However, I don't think he is Chelsea level, and he isn't young enough anymore for us to say that okay, his potential will explode one day. However, he has some performances good in him, so he can find another club where he can play regularly. But I don't feel it is at us. I don't think he has the attributes of being a top level midfielder. He carries the ball way too much for my liking, doesn't have that kind of sense when to release it soon enough, and he has shown that he hasn't improved that. And also, several times he isn't as accurate when it comes to passing and loses the ball, has a kind of tendency to lose the ball in dangerous areas as well. So for me, it's although he's a coordinated player due to his technicality on the ground and its height, which is something that you rarely see from this kind of player with such physicality. I don't think that he will ever get back to the shape he was in the Europa League knockout stages before the injury he got in Boston. So under Maurizio Sarri. So for me, he is at the time to make a decision for the good of his career. And although I respect his contribution at his best for the club, I don't think he should stay. And he just isn't Chelsea level anymore. So for me, it's a sell.
I mean, honestly, that is very well summed up and almost exactly how I would describe it. You know, we have younger players coming through like Conor Gallagher, Billy Gilmore. We have these guys. So if we're going to keep Conte and we're going to keep Jorginho, we're going to play Kovacic most weeks. We could potentially move Mount into midfield. We'd still have Gallagher then. I don't know what his role would be in that dynamic. It's going to be more than whatever Loftus-Cheek has to offer. So I think that I'm with you. I'm very respectful for everything he's done. He was kind of the original player to break through as far as the academy goes, all the way back to Jose season 2 or volume 2. You know, when he returned to Chelsea was when he was kind of breaking through. So that was like 8 years ago when we won the title with Mourinho. That was a long, long time ago. So I think, yeah, I would move him on this summer. I think you need to let him play for his own career now as a consistent starter. And like, I think he's a mid-table type player. That's where I think he is. That's nothing against him. To be a mid-table player in the Premier League still means that you're like probably in the top 1% of all players that exist in the world. So, you know, you're still doing pretty well in that regard. So I think I'm with you. I think almost all the reasons you laid out, I couldn't have put it really any better. I think that, yeah, you have to accept, thank you for everything you've done. You were one of an important players from a symbolic reason. But it's time to move on. And I think that moving him along is the best for us at this point. I totally agree on that one.
Yeah. Now the last category is the forwards. And I think there may be some kind of dual perspectives because they have their territory of getting misunderstood from some people. Some are overrated, and it's difficult to make your mind up on some of the names. I'm starting with Mason Mount, which for me is a keep. But as I stated when it was Reece James's turn to discuss, he's tired too, in my opinion, when it comes to the current level of Chelsea players. So with any kind of disrespect, and I say this because I feel that he has the potential of becoming a star player for our club, not in a vanity way, but in a footballing wise. So it's something that he has to grow on, and he has shown signs that he is more inclined to be creative and to take part in direct contribution more than any of our current attackers. And I can't ignore that. However, people that say that he's the final product are deceiving themselves in a way and just putting pressure on him furthermore because the players have social media and they are in contact with the comments made on them and stuff like that. So I want him to be more decisive, sharper in some cases. So consistently he has to offer more due to the ceiling he has, which is for me very promising. And the problem is that the people are trying to say, okay, this is Mason, he is a world beater, but he isn't yet in this profile. Whether it is a case of him not playing in his natural position, I have always seen him in the academy, and he played as an 8 more than a kind of inverted 4. But that's another kind of discussion. In terms of decision making and the ability to make penetrative passes and play vertically and to release the ball earlier, he can do better. He is a machine when it comes to pressing, and I'm not denying his love. I'm not even thinking about such, because it'd be totally unfair on him. He is devoted to the club, and I hope, as I said with Reese, that he stays and renews. However, when it comes to both of them, you can sense a kind of differences both in mentality and consistency and what they offer, in my opinion. So Mount is a keep, and I'm not even thought about any other option. However, I think it's Reese tier 1 and Mount tier 2. In terms, I didn't necessarily have to make this comparison, but I wanted to express myself that there is maybe a slight kind of difference, but there is a kind of difference between both of them. So despite his hype and everything that people say, he's a very good player, but he can become even better. So for me, it's a keep, but he has to improve even more and to become a star player for us in years to come, because he has the potential and also the age to build on what he has already shown.
Yeah, Mount's keep for me. It's one of our most important players. I think that given if he stays where he currently is or he moves back into midfield, which is more natural to where he, in the past has been playing throughout his career, doesn't matter to me. I think you got to keep Mason Mount. It will be interesting if we continue to make more signings, what happens and where his role gets shifted or how it might get shifted. But yeah, I can't even come up with a bad faith argument to get rid of Mount, let alone a legitimate argument for why he should leave the club. Absolutely, you keep Mason Mount. I mean, these are, like I said, it is a fan voted award, but he is our, back-to-back Player of the Year winner. Again, it's a fan voted award, so don't put too much stock in that. But it does show you that he is a fan favorite. Obviously, he is. Broke the academy. There's a whole story, connection to the club. There are 1,000 intangible reasons why to keep Mason Mount, as well as his performances on the field. I'm just going to stop there. I don't think there's anything else to talk about with Mason Mount. You keep him, play him, things will be fine.
Indisputably. I don't have a real negative thing to say about him either. I just said that we have to be realistic and say that he can improve even more than what he has already done.
And I agree with you. I think that he can improve. I think that primarily where he can improve is, I think at times the decision making in the final third lacks a little bit. And I'm just gonna be honest. I know it's a huge Twitter debate between a lot of the the people that are Mount advocates and a lot of the ones that don't like him. It tends to be a big point of disagreement is his kind of overall contribution in the open phase of play. I don't think that. I think a bit of it is bad faith. I think a bit of it's true as far as that debate goes. I think that's where he can improve. Is that he needs to have a better decision making. Primarily, he needs to make decisions quicker in the final third. I think sometimes it's just a little too slow as far as his decision making goes. And then I think he could probably, in some ways, if he's going to be moved back into midfield, position himself better at times, as opposed to just running and pressing. But granted, he might have the instructions from the manager to always be moving around and not really being positionally disciplined as a way to create more of a press and a counter press higher up the pitch against the opponent. So regardless, he can improve. Everybody can improve unless you're a perfect player, but perfection's a scam. So keep him out. He's fine. He's good. We'll be all right.
Now, the next name, I don't want you to judge on basis of nationalism, because you are American and Christian Pulisic is also American. Because it will come my turn where we talk about Armando Broja, because I'm Albanian and he's Albanian.
Yep.
But the thing is, yeah. But the thing is that we have to judge on Chelsea based arguments. So the and Christian Pulisic for me, uh, it's not the most impressive attacker that we have, in my opinion. So yes, he had his positive explosive actually period under Frank after Project Restart, could take people on for fun, had the end product, turned up in big games, also could show those accelerations with the ball with such ease that you thought that this guy has been never injured in his life. However, after the frequent injuries he has had, and even after coming back from the national team, similarly to N'Golo Kante, as you said, he hasn't shown the same sort of dynamism that he used to under Frank. Now, there are many arguments that people try to find regarding why this happens this way. Some of them being the fact that the current season doesn't have natural wingers, so he doesn't play in his natural position. But for me, it's a deeper thing than that. I think it's maybe also a kind of psychological barrier that he may have due to the injuries. It maybe not be the kind of profile that he used to be in terms of taking people on and slamming between defenders and also having that frequent end product. However, he's a good option of the bench and has been so till now. And there's a reason why Thomas Tuchel himself said that he is more inclined to give a contribution when he comes off the bench rather than when he starts. However, I'm saying we should keep him, but this season is a defining one for his status at the club. I know that he's still young, but however, you have to make a point and prove that you are here to be in the plans of the manager and not just take it for granted and be under the radar like he has been in the last 1 year and a half. I can't deny that I have a sort of inner fear regarding his injury record, that if we sell him without processing the thought of consequences of selling him well enough, we may have an Arjen Robben kind of scenario in the future. And this is what I fear, because it's a similar case on that there are two players in principle that have the perspective of becoming electric wingers for us, but due to the injury records, the fans grow reservations. They did for Robben. I was very young at the time, but have watched so documentaries and people's thoughts, and also for Pulisic, a similar scenario. So keep, but it's a season defining. So this one is a season defining for him.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with what you say. It is season defining. From where I stand as an American, what I've kind of been saying more recently in this offseason is, Pulisic gets, I think, disproportionate amount of grief from the fan base, to put it a little less of a charged word there. I think that he gets a little bit unnecessary grief from the fan base, right? Like let's just talk about it from a narrative standpoint. Like when he missed the some of the chances that he missed in the Champions League match against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, it was kind of like unilateral hate that was being thrown at him, and there was just a lot that was negatively talked about from Pulisic by basically everybody. But then when you kind of conversely look at how Mason Mount missed similar, if not much more worse chances in the final against Liverpool in the cup final, the narrative was literally the narrative that was being spun the loudest was, well, at least Mason gets in the position to even miss the chances to begin with. That shows you the hard work and dedication, and it's just like the PR team. Just the PR teams that we have that exist within the fan base for how different players are analyzed and discussed. It's usually with some type of bias, and I think that's what I see so often with fans, is that the player stan era has really borne a lot of this. Now, I'm kind of going into a diatribe a little bit that maybe is a little bit off subject, but I say these things to caveat how the narrative is so different between when Pulisic does something wrong as opposed to when other people in the attack do something wrong. Because the truth here is that most of our attack does something wrong more times than not across everybody. That doesn't really spare anyone from that criticism I just gave. I think the thing with Pulisic, though, is routinely Pulisic is talked about as somebody that should have already hit the heights that we expected with his talent profile. He should already be there. He's had so many years doing XYZ. Why is he not at a better level? Well, the thing is, he's 23 years old, and we see other general arguments for players of his age being kept because they still need time to develop more. So if that's kind of the argument we've seen developed with our other players that are around 21, 22, 23, 24, then why is it not equally applied to Christian Pulisic? That's the question I would say. I do think that Pulisic has limitations with his game. I think that primarily he tends to put his head down and dribble and not get his head up nearly enough, which lets him down in many ways. He's also been played out of position more times than he's played in position so far under Thomas Tuchel, which to me is a hard thing to deal with. As a player, I think that he needs to be settled more at a position, not being shuffled into wing back. I'm not really sure how that experiment started to begin with. But just looking on the balance of things, he's actually, when you dig into the numbers, Pulisic's one of our better goal scorers. And that's going to probably come as a shock to many because they just have these flashbulb memories of him missing these big chances and these big moments. And I think it's kind of a vividness bias is what that's called. The vividness of him missing those chances is kind of overweighing the underlying data in people's memories. So that's where I'm at with Pulisic. I think he's underrated by the fans. I think he gets a disproportionate narrative compared to others for the same exact actions. And I think that as far as a depth player goes, I want him to be a sub off of the bench because he is a super sub. He routinely comes on later in matches and uses his directness and his pace to create and cause so many different problems for the opposing back line. I am keeping Christian Pulisic this year, but if he does not show it more in this upcoming season, that he is ready, he is the guy to lead, or at least to take a bigger role and prove that he is, a super club caliber player, then I think next season we move on from him. So I agree with you. It very much is a, prove it year for Christian Pulisic. But I also would say that I think that a lot of the things that we hear that are negatively discussed about him within the fan base tend to be, in my opinion, very much narrative and agenda-based things. People could obviously turn this around and say that I'm just a biased American rooting for my compatriot, blah, blah, blah. There probably is some truth in that because there's a bias I just cannot separate as being an American. And I've been watching Christian Pulisic for what feels like a decade now as a player. I've seen him live. I've seen him captain America before in matches. I've seen him score live. He's just a player I have a lot of respect for. And so granted, yeah, I would accept that argument. But trying to be as objective as I can, I think he would be an incredibly impactful substitute coming in the front three. And if we don't sign another attacker, I don't see why he couldn't start over the likes of Werner, over the likes of, if Mount moves in midfield, that's not even a question anymore. So it'd pretty much be like Werner, Ziyech is still here but on his way out, and Callum Hudson-Odoi. So I think that, there's a lot more to offer here. There needs to be more output. But I think that overall, yeah, there's a lot to offer here, and there's no reason to move on just yet.
Yeah, totally agree. So more or less, we have the same stance and the same explanation regarding the situation. I'm aware of his limitations, and at the same time, agree with you when people have a go at him specifically and tolerate the others. You either criticize all or sugarcoat all, and of course, the thing that you have to follow based on Chelsea-related standards is the first, not the latter. So when there is place for criticism, you have to criticize all, and I think that's undisputable. Timo Werner, now we were talking together in the chat so some days before, right, about Timo. It's now I feel sorry from a sentimental perspective due to the fact that he has had his first season at us of a kind of what outweighs which. So there were many positives, and there was a number of negatives, including the fact that he wasn't as a prolific goal scorer as we expected him to be.
Yeah.
He was the second best goal scorer in Bundesliga in 1920. However, he brought a number of positives that he could compensate the negatives with. So he made those drifts wide. He could provide depth. He could make those in behind runs. Could be a kind of option for a focal point against the teams that played in a high line. If you remember the Liverpool game at Anfield, we won 1-0 through Mount's goal. He had a wrongly disallowed goal through offside, in my opinion. He rounded Alisson and scored. And, he showed those things that he disturbed the opposition defenses week in, week out. So he was a problem for the teams that couldn't really cope with his pace and with his ability to open up channels for the teammates. However, he hasn't shown any of that the season we left behind us. It was a case of three positive games all season, which were both games against Southampton in the league and the Bernabeu game in Madrid. And I can't really remember any really significant game when I say yes, Werner was not so among the two or three best players that we had. So I think that he has shown some signs of a backward step at us. It's not the case that we expected, that a player who comes from abroad has difficult in the beginning to settle and then he improves his performances. He is going backwards. So he was showing signs of settlement at the beginning, and now there are many negatives and scarcely positive. So that's why I think that he can't get away with just his professionalism, which I'm not debating, and I'm thankful to him for that. But however, he has to make sure that he plays for Chelsea, and in this case, he can't get away, especially on the wages he is, with such basic performances that he has produced, without any sense of decision making. His dribbling is one of his weaknesses, and I think that also the link up with the teammates against teams that play in a low block make him too isolated. So I feel sorry to say, but for me it's a sell. We have to cash in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Timo Werner, what I do like is that tactically he does offer a profile of player that is unique, and the fact that he does stretch the length of the field so well, and that it's a defensive structured team to play a very high line, to play that offsides trap. And the reason why you play that offsides trap is not just from a defensive aspect, but it's also kind of a pressing aspect where if you can just pin the entire game in the opponent's half, it's really hard to get out. So if you guys could, please give the channel today a like and a subscription if you haven't already. We really appreciate that. Feel like it's been a great discussion today, and hope you're all enjoying it as much as we are. But I would say more with Werner, it gets to a point where tactical advantages need to have realized output on the pitch. Otherwise, is it really a tactical advantage if you're not seeing any direct output from the advantage itself? That's when I argue it's just an option. It's an option to have a field stretcher. It may not be a tactical advantage because Werner just simply doesn't put the ball in the back of the net nearly enough. And even he admits this. I mean, even he talked about this last season, that he's in the worst spell of his career. He doesn't understand why when he plays for Chelsea that nothing works, but when he goes to Germany, it works like nothing ever changed. That right there is an indictment on the fact that Werner tactically, is the profile player he has, just does not work with Thomas Tuchel, which is an entirely other conversation to have, that really no attacker seems to work very well with Thomas Tuchel's system that he has implemented at Chelsea. So that's why I have to say with Timo Werner, it gets to the point where the player doesn't know what's going on. The fans don't know what's going on. The manager probably doesn't even know what's going on. And why there's no goal output, and why he was a 35+ goal player per season in the Bundesliga with Leipzig, but he can't. The best he's done for us is, I think, 21 goals and assists. I mean, he won a lot of other penalties, but that's a whole other thing. I just have to say that we have to sell Werner for him, for us, for Germany, for everyone involved. We need to get rid of Timo Werner because I'm sure is that the player he is with the fee he was brought in on, with the status he had when he came to the club, with the wages he's on, I'm sure that he doesn't want to be stuck in this dynamic either, where he's basically a third, fourth choice option is out on the wing or the playing striker. We don't even really use Timo as a lone striker anymore. And I think what you said best, Helgi, was that he does have a couple moments that stick out to you. But the problem are those moments are so few and far between that you're kind of grasping at lightning in a bottle. You're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. And it's really just a flash in the pan, and that's all it is. It's not something that you're going to get again and again, because if you look at the teams that what he did the best against, Real Madrid, who played a much more attacking style, and then he always does well against Southampton because they play the highest line basically in the entire Premier League, which is unsurprisingly how they play very often across all the teams in the Bundesliga, and that's where he had so much success. I think you have to sell him back to the Bundesliga, and you need to recoup what you can for the club's sake, to get his wages off the book, and then for Timo's sake, let's move him on. That's all I have to say about Timo Werner. I think it's time to sell. I personally like Werner a lot. From what he offers on a tactical perspective, that guy can play on the last shoulder of every defender and win almost every through ball because he's simply faster than everybody that he goes up against. But it just doesn't work for Chelsea. I've seen 2 years of it. It doesn't work well enough. And the tactical advantage that he's supposed to offer is at this point more a theory than a reality. It's time to sell.
Yeah, and also the speed is something is to be fast without the ball, and something completely different is to be fast with the ball in your feet. So,
Yeah.
The latter is where he struggles because he can't really use his natural speed to the max. So that's why it's one of the other reasons why I'm saying that he has played very, very basically this.
Yeah, and there's a comment here from Coach
Yeah.
Chris. He says that's the thing. None of the attackers are playing well. Now, if Sterling comes and doesn't play well, it falls on the manager. And I agree with that. I think that's very true. I think it's a very good statement because if Sterling comes and doesn't play well, then that's basically the history, the track record with Tuchel at Chelsea is defensive, basically a defensive wall of steel. For the most part, it fell apart a lot last season. But on the attacking side, none of our attackers look like they're ever just in electric form. They all look like they have to labor to get through the matches. So that's something else entirely. Very, very good comment there from Coach Chris that I agree with.
The issue is that Thomas Tuchel has shown signs of improving attackers in the previous clubs that generally have been underwhelming. And that's why I think that it falls on the players, not on the manager. I get the point behind the comment, but Thomas Tuchel was somebody that got his best out of Andre Schürrle, for example, in 2 different clubs, at Mainz and Dortmund.
Yeah.
He got the best out of Aubameyang at Dortmund. He got the best out of Angel Di Maria at PSG, who hasn't been a prolific goal scorer. He isn't even a striker, but he still got a considerable number of goals from him. And also other names like Neymar or Mbappe, who are prolific goal scorers in principle, still, despite the nature, the low-level nature of the league in France, they still had more direct contributions under Tuchel rather than under the other managers like Emery or even Pochettino now. So, and this fact, you also accompanied with the fact that the way our current attackers perform, it falls down to missing sitters more often than not, is something that for me doesn't really follow the man. It would if they would be totally isolated, but they find themselves in goal scoring situations more often than not. So I feel it's a case of them being not good enough or not prepared enough to play for the club in the levels we want, rather than the manager who found the team in mid-table and of course had to establish a strong defensive structure. But I don't think it has come at the expense of the attacking potential, because we may have less created chances than City and Liverpool, but still we have to bear in mind that stats-wise they have also players who have more spontaneity in their game rather than ours. So we don't have a Kevin De Bruyne or Salah or Mane profile like Liverpool had. So of course it's coach based, but also the players themselves should devise things out of the blue. And I don't think that except Mount or sometimes Havertz, we don't really have the attackers that can really do. And Ziyech also, but he is specifically right winger. He's not a central player. Now coming to the last three names of the first team that we have, I think we'll more or less agree on them. The first one is Ziyech. I have had many debates with people regarding Ziyech. I would undisputably keep him, and that's why that comes to the fact that the reason why he doesn't find a place in the team is that he's more of a casualty or a victim of the system rather than a player that hasn't established himself since he came. So you saw under Frank when we played in a 4, he performed very well through scoring goals and giving those crosses with the left more often than not as a right winger. Then in this system he hasn't been as prolific, but it's not his fault to when it comes to being a universal kind of player, because that's just a bonus. So yes, he isn't that one Mata kind of left-footed attacker that we may have wanted to see from him, that could assist and contribute in every kind of position, whether you play him centrally or as a winger or as a midfielder. He's specifically a right winger, but it's not somebody to blame just because he does, of the fact that he doesn't perform well enough as a inverted forward as well as he performs as a right winger. He came as a right winger, he plays as a right winger, and when we reverted to a 4 at the back in January, February, he gave his contribution, scored against Tottenham, scored against Palace, played very well in both League Cup games when he featured. So I think with the changes in personnel, with the new defenders coming, Sterling coming, and maybe even more attackers coming, and also reports that Thomas Tuchel has at the back of his mind the opportunity the possibility to revert to a back 4 when it's needed, I think that we should keep Hakim Ziyech.
And that's another reason, I said this earlier with Jorginho, but we need players that won't be at the World Cup. Ziyech won't be at the World Cup because he retired from Moroccan football, kind of due to the fallout between himself and the manager. Whole other thing. But my thing on the Ziyech is this. I'll be honest, when he was signed from Ajax, it was out of the summer when we bought like 6 or 7 new starting players, basically. He was the one I was most excited for because I really like that profile player. The winger out there who basically is this free roll winger that creates chances. And I really thought that was going to be similar to what we saw with like Juan Mata. They're not the same players, but I thought we could have enough of an overlap to possibly get 75% of what we got out of Mata. So then with that said, I really like Hakim Ziyech. It's a player that I personally have a lot of respect for. And if I was building an attack, I'd love to have a player on the wing that's just a chance creator. I would love to have that. Now, the problem is it's just not working. It's just not working at Chelsea. And too often what we see is that when Ziyech does hit form, which he did last winter, that's when he was in very good form for us, was last winter. He plays well, he plays well, he keeps getting picked, and all of a sudden he's just out of the team and just doesn't ever come back in as a starter for months. And then he might get a chance and he'll do okay after a run of matches, and then he's out of the team for months again. Some of it's injuries, some of it's a managerial selection to just not put him in the 11. But it's been 2 years of this now, and it's not getting any better with Thomas Tuchel. If anything, it's only getting worse as far as how often Ziyech plays and how much impact he has when he plays. I think we have to move him on for that reason. I think that he is too late in his career to keep around as maybe he'll come really good for us. And the only reason I'd keep him is because of the World Cup aspect. But other than that, I would rather for his own career him move on than to stay here and rot as this 3rd, 4th choice, not fitting the manager's profile, not really being what the manager wants. It's just not what I see working long term. And that's just why I have to say I think it's time to move on. We're not playing with a central attacking midfielder. We're not playing with direct and out wingers. We're playing with more inside forwards as opposed to any of those two things. Ziyech used to be attacking mid. He's been converted more into a winger. We don't use either of those profiles. I think it's time to move on. I love Hakeem Ziyech. I think he's a great player. I think that what you saw how good he could be under Frank Lampard, that's when he was looking incredible. Those like maybe the last or kind of the October, November period of Frank's final few months in charge. But it hasn't worked out the same since. And I think we got to move on. That's where I'm at with Ziyech. I'm happy to have him stay. I just don't see the fit, don't see the role, and I just don't see it working with Thomas Tuchel long term. I think that it's time that we should sell this summer.
Okay, no, yeah, I totally agree with the elaboration in principle, but I think that if we revert to a forward the back, I think that the situation can very well change. So that's the reason why I'm saying keep him, because we don't have. Maybe we will have a sort of system with Sterling on the left and Ziyech on the right, which can be very beneficial, and that's why I'm not pulling the trigger yet in this regard. But I totally understand what you mean. Now, about Kai and Callum, the last two names, we will. For Kai, it's an obvious one because we'll have discussed also in sort of other contexts in the two previous streams, and I totally get that he hasn't been, let's say, the most explosive young profile of player that we wanted him to be after getting him from Leverkusen. But the way he has adapted gradually shows that he has strong signs of being a key player for us. His big game record is promising, is good. Scored in the Champions League final, scored from the spot in the League Cup final, and also had a period during the sanctions when he found consistency. And I think that he is a player that has to be played as a number 9 because something of Dennis Bergkamp or Robin van Persie kind of attacker, so not a central attacking midfielder or not a winger or central midfielder specifically, but similar to a 9, not the classic 9 that people are used to see, but a modern 9 that is able to blindside defenses and also to link up well in tight areas and drop deep and provide that profile that allows the others to be more versatile as well. So he has all the potential in the world, and I hope that he shows more development this year in this specific position, because I have made up my mind that I think that his best position is a number 9, as Thomas Tuchel says. So for me, it's a keep.
Yeah, it's a keep for me with Kai Havertz. We don't have the numbers to even afford to discuss getting rid of him. That's the first thing, as well as we made such a commitment to him as our future that to abandon now at year 3 would not be a very good decision. Now, I will say that what we paid for Kai Havertz, I don't think that it's been rewarded whatsoever. I don't think that when you look at how many chances the guy misses, I mean, I think he misses, the statistic last year was almost 70% of the big chances that were created for him he missed. 70%. I mean, that is atrocious finishing. Kai has a lot of talent. He has a lot of promise. I think it's become obvious that his best position is not in midfield. It's going to be at least some type of fluid pressing forward. That's really how I would describe his role at this point. He's a pressing forward, which is great. I mean, that's the way modern football is migrating. It's kind of what's being expected more and more of the forwards to press and not just be how we used to see players like what Ronaldo or Lukaku or other forwards of past years that didn't used to play that way. Well, that's just the way we play now. Look at the best teams. They all have forwards who press. Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Madrid. There's a lot of pressing going on with those forwards. And they need to do more than just score goals. Like, they have to be able to drop. Basically, they have to be able to play on the shoulder, check back to the midfielders, get involved in link up, still move around the front 3, create presses, create counter presses. Kai can do all of those things. I think that he just needs the finishing ability to improve, and he needs to actually be involved in goal scoring opportunities much more. Maybe as time goes on, he better realizes that potential, because he has a lot of the underlying things that I would, basically be looking for to check boxes to play in this Tuchel system. Mainly of which is simply his pressing ability. which is not generally what you're going to associate with a forward. But look, I mean, we're not going to get rid of him. Now, if after 3 seasons, if we're after this upcoming season, we're still having this conversation with Kai with, well, if we wait a little longer, he'll get better, he'll improve, he'll get more goals. If we're still having that conversation after 3 years, then I think it's going to be a much different tone to how fans look and think and discuss Kai Havertz. But for now, you keep him. We don't have the numbers to even consider going away from him. We probably shouldn't consider it based on how much we spent, and we're only 2 years into the deal. Keep Kai Havertz.
Yeah, totally agree. The last name is Callum Hudson-Odoi. It's a tricky one in the sense that he has changed some of his attributes from what he has had in the academy. I used to watch him a lot, and this time last week I said that if there were 2 features that they were very distinguishable at him in his academy, in the academy teams, were shooting power. He even scored free kicks from long range back then, and also his accelerations with the ball. But if dribbling becomes a problem when you break through and make the transition from the academy side to the first team, due to the increased quality of the fullbacks and they get more experience and stuff like that, shooting is an independent feature. So I don't get why his shots more often than not lack both power and precision. And this is something he has to solve along with his physical situation, which hasn't been the best possible one. Ideally, I would say a loan would have been good for him, especially a quality loan, because he's young and he can go, for example, at Dortmund, like they wanted him last season, would have been a good loan in order to prove a different territory and see how he could cope there with another kind of league, maybe less intense, but with more ability to nurture him some kind of skills that allowed him to come back stronger in terms of his attacking potential. However, now I think it's not realistic. So it's more or less similar case to Pulisic. So I would see this season of him as the last one, because yes, he's young, but it's his 6th season at the club, so he has to prove his point. It's unacceptable for him to carry on scoring 4 goals a season, which is totally unacceptable. Despite the fact that he's young, he has to do more. He has to be more imposing and more clinical, because he gets himself in promising positions, but he can't make the most of them. So clinically wise, I will say I keep an eye on him and hope that he explodes this season. So it's keep, but it's like for Pulisic, even for him, it's a season-defining one.
Yeah, just here, whoever this true blue is obviously not happy with whoever doesn't even give me a name. But I would say here, I don't know really what you're talking about, telling me to research players, but Havertz, you're saying he's an attacking mid, but he's been played by Thomas Tuchel for over like 8 months as a forward,
right.
Primarily a lone forward, which is typically considered a striker. So I'm not really sure what you're taking exception with there. But look at how they're played, not whatever, a card of a player might say. The role which Havertz has been occupied in is not an attacking midfielder role. It's not. He is playing generally as somebody who is playing on as the furthest guy forward, who is dropping in, checking deep to help with build-up, and then moving around, pressing. That's not really an attacking midfielder. So I'll agree to disagree on that one. But I feel that I've done plenty of research. I've watched months and months of these players. We have another comment here that Timo is our striker. We lost faith in him, and he lost his confidence. Fantastic before he joined Chelsea. Don't turn him into another Torres. I actually agree with you. He was fantastic, but the system just doesn't work here. Not really that I've lost faith in him. It's more so that I've lost faith in how the system uses Timo Werner's skill set, and that system's not ostensibly changing, right, as far as we're aware of. So that's why I think that we would move on from him, and not that Timo's not good enough. It's just that this isn't the profile of system that suits him well enough to succeed. I have full faith he'll go back to the Bundesliga and probably be putting in 20 plus goals per season routinely. But back to Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think you're right. He is very similar to Pulisic in some ways. He's a little bit younger. I think the age factor, where I'm at with Callum Hudson-Odoi is it very much like Pulisic. This to me is a season-defining season, or it is a club-defining season for Callum Hudson-Odoi in the sense that if he succeeds, I think the club has all of the ammunition to think that he is the right guy to get a larger role and start getting integrated in the squad and potentially the 11 much more than he currently is. But if he doesn't succeed this year, we have to simply look at the facts. We'd be having 5 years of talking about Callum Hudson-Odoi as the next big thing. 5 years. 5 years. It's just simply too long to be discussing a player in the same narrative. And if it hasn't come to fruition within that 5-year narrative, and that 5-year timeline of that narrative, that he is going to be the world beater that we expect for us in the future, I just think that's when you have to accept the reality. 5 years is much too long. The developmental pathway for Cho, if it doesn't work out this season, simply proves that developmental pathways are non-linear, and what looks like a slam dunk in the present may very well turn out far from that 5 years down the road. I think Callum has the tools. It's going to be interesting to see. All we've been really hearing this offseason is that Cho has bulked up. He's this, really strong, primed athlete now. And I kind of always laugh at those because there's really no data out there that says weightlifting is predictive for footballing ability and success as in a career for football. So that's an entire topic I could talk about for a long time that I argue with fans a lot. But again, that's where I'm at with Cho. This season is very much a prove it season. We've heard that for a lot of times. So if he does not take that step forward this season, I sell. But for this season, I keep. I let him have one last final shot at proving that he is worth the wages that we gave him at the time that we gave that to him. So that's where I'm at. I'd keep him this year, but it very much like Pulisic, we need to see it this season. And if we don't, then it very well could be a case that he's going to be out the door this upcoming off season next summer. So I'm kind of much in agreement with Cho as you described. That's where I'm at with him.
Yeah. So we have come to an end of the assessment of the players. For timing reasons, we'll go through the next episode to the loanies, what we think about them. I have written down the choices of both of us during the stream, and we actually disagree only on Alonso and Ziyech. So these are the names that so I say sell Alonso, you say keep. I say keep Ziyech, and you say sell. So these are two intriguing names to see specifically, among others, for the season to come. Now, before we round off, very shortly about today. So in the morning, Kalidou Koulibaly was announced as the new signing of a great defensive addition. I'm very happy that he has joined. I've wanted him since 2016, but wanted to know your comments regarding him and Sterling very shortly before we round off, and hope that we have added more additions to the team and quality additions until this time. So this time next week on the next stream.
Yep. Sounds good. I'll be here. Looking forward to it next week, and we'll keep on going through with the returning players, some of the new transfers. Of course, there's the point. Just something about Koulibaly and Sterling. I wanted to talk about them in short. Sterling, as we have already discussed the last two episodes, we have our reservations, and we still hope that he will prove us wrong regarding them, clear our doubts, and become an essential profile in the team. I'm very delighted personally with the way he has adapted in the team and how he is the existing bonds he has with the English players in the team help a lot in terms of the atmosphere in the dressing room and in the training ground. And I hope that he will evolve and become even better, reach his aspirations of becoming a top player under Thomas Tuchel's management. And Kalidou Koulibaly specifically has been it's very exciting to see, also due to the fact that how quickly the transfer got wrapped up. So we were expecting news about the league still, and
although his name didn't really convince me, I was trying to think that we are very serious on him, and Koulibaly is a mere alternative. But now he's a Chelsea player with a fantastic price in modern football, and despite the age that people are saying, for me it's a perfect age for a player like him, with his stamina, physicality, and ability to play in different positions in defense and lead by example, similar to Thiago Silva, to be in our club. So great addition, and I'm looking forward to listening to the first interviews for the club, both for Raheem Sterling and Kalidou Koulibaly's one. So two very nice additions, and hopefully they will fulfill the expectations and will prove to be very successful signings for us. So by that, I had to end today's episode. It was a bit prolonged, but very enjoyable due to the special topic that we had today. I personally enjoyed it a lot, and exploit the occasion to thank Travis for the analysis and the bond. Now we know each other very well, and it's a pleasure to have known him. As I said, both as a person and as a Chelsea fan, it's a massive pleasure, and I feel really thankful to have created this kind of partnership with him in this series of frankly Saturdays, which is focused on transfers and player statuses in the team specifically. So thank you very much. It's a massive pleasure. Thanks to everyone in the chat for the participation. Please again, like, subscribe, and like the video. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't, in order not to miss any new video, both for our show and the other shows of the channel. So thank you very much, everyone. See you same day, same hour next week with another topic, and hopefully we'll have strong updates regarding the club, positive updates, of course, maybe also new incomings by 2 p.m. UK time next week. So thanks again, and bye.
Thanks again. See you next week.
See you.